Okay, good morning. Remember, we have an exam on Wednesday. You also have a Blackboard portion to this exam, and I put on Blackboard the specific parts of the specific objectives and outcomes from the learning guides that will be on the Blackboard portion. Okay, it's not up there yet. Don't email me, ask me about it. I will email you first, and then if you can't find it, then email me. Okay, but I will email you as soon as it's ready and online. And I'm hoping to have it online by Wednesday for you and give you probably a week to do it, just like last time. All right, so we want to finish up chapter 14 today. I want to talk about the cranial nerves. Before I forget, you probably have already gotten via email on Wednesday or Thursday the table. I know some of you did it, but I wanted for us to all be consistent, so I typed it up. And so we all know what we need to know about each of those structures. If you didn't get that table attached to the email, it is on Blackboard in the handout section. And I think it just says brain regions completed or something like that. So download that, reconcile it with what you already put down, okay, and then use that as your study sheet. All right, so the cranial nerves. We know the spinal cord has 31 pairs of spinal nerves that come off of it. Well, the brain has 12 pairs of nerves, and they're called cranial nerves. The majority of them innervate the head and neck. There are a couple that actually extend beyond the head and neck, but most of them innervate the head and neck and the structures within those particular areas. Now, they are indicated by Roman numerals. So if you're not sure of your Roman numerals, you might want to look that up. Now, there is a saying in your book. There's a very easy way to remember this. Page 550. And I'm not going to write it all out for you because it's right there, but each word in that sentence corresponds to a couple of letters in each of these cranial nerves. So the statement says, Old Opie occasionally tries trigonometry and feels very gloomy, vague, and hypoactive. In other words, when he does trigonometry, he's really bored and he falls asleep. So if you look at those words, Old Opie, the first letter or two or three correspond with the first letter or two or three for all these cranial nerves. Now, there's other ones that you can make up your own. You can go online and find one. There's some that are appropriate, some that are inappropriate. I'll let you choose whatever ones you want to use. Don't reinvent the wheel unless it's easier for you. Don't put a lot of energy into creating something new when it's already been done for you. So find the one that works best for you. But I want you to know the name, and I want you to know the number that corresponds with the cranial nerve. I also want you to know if it's sensory or motor, or if it's a combination of sensory and motor fibers. And there's a saying that goes with that as well. And that one is like this. And I'll tell you what the letters mean. Some say marry money, but my brother says better brains matter most. So S is sensory. M is motor. And B is mixed, or both sensory and motor. I don't like using the word mixed here because there's M, so we'll just say it's both sensory and motor. So I want you to be able to tell me which cranial nerve is sensory, which ones are motor, which one have a combination of sensory and motor fibers. Even though it may say motor on here, there may be a few sensory fibers on there, or even if it's sensory, there may be a few motor fibers on there, but the letters typically represent, as far as motor and sensory here, the majority. Now, if we, yeah.
The very last part of the saying.
Better brains matter most. Some say marry money, but my brother says better brains matter most. All right, now as far as function, I do want you to know the function of some of these nerves. And the ones I'm going to give you this semester are not all that difficult because if you look at their name, you should be able to know a little bit about what they do. So olfactory. So that's the cranial nerve involved in transmitting olfactory signals. Optic. That's the one that carries stimuli from the eyeball, from the retina. Oculomotor. That actually is involved in moving the eyeball and involved in pupillary constriction and dilation. Cranial nerve 8, vestibulocochlear. It has two parts to it. The vestibular nerve or vestibular branch is what carries signals from your vestibular apparatus, your organs in your inner ear involved with balance and equilibrium. And then the cochlear branch of this particular nerve carries auditory sensory information. So any of the things that come in as far as sound waves into your ear, those signals will be carried to the auditory processing centers via the cochlear branch. So you should be familiar with what the cochlea is from lab. I know we haven't talked about it here yet, but the cochlea involved in hearing. I'm going to throw these on here as well. The trochlear and the abducens. Trochlear and the abducens both are involved in moving the eyeball, along with the oculomotor. There's three cranial nerves involved in moving the eyeball: oculomotor, trochlear, and abducens. Each one does something a little bit different. In fact, if you remember from the eyeball dissection that you did, you probably had seen some of those extrinsic eye muscles that control the movement of the eye. When they contract, the eyeball moves in certain ways. Those muscles are innervated by one of those three nerves. Now the abducens is pretty easy to remember because it abducts the eyeball. So if you want to turn your look to the right, your right eye is abducted while your left eye is adducted. The abducens is what allows the right eye to do this. The abducens is what allows the left eye to look that way, or abduct the eye. Okay? And the trochlear nerve is also involved in that. The trochlea is actually a structure that is associated with the eyeball and the orbital cavity there. But this nerve kind of winds through there and contracts the superior oblique muscle, allowing you to kind of look up that way. What else do I want to tell you here? When you go to the doctor and have your physical, and the doctor's like, all right, follow my eye, and you're doing this and that, what they're doing is they're checking the integrity of these cranial nerves. Each cranial nerve allows the eyeball to move in a different direction, and if you're unable to follow the doctor's light or their finger in a certain way, then that can give them some clues that maybe you have some type of lesion on a cranial nerve, or maybe even on part of the brainstem that's involved with that particular nerve. All right, so those are the 6 that I want you to know, and I don't really need you to know any more than what I've just given you. The book goes into a significant amount of detail for each of these. The sensory portions and the motor portions, and specifically the muscles and the glands and things that they innervate. Let's not worry about that. Just have a general idea what they do. Now, I do want you to know a couple other things, and it relates to some stuff from the brain regions. For example, cranial nerves 3 and 4 are associated with the midbrain. 3 and 4 are both nerves that are involved in moving the eyeball. And if you look at some of the functions of the midbrain, some of the functions of the midbrain have to do with visual processing and tracking of objects with your eyes and so on. So that kind of makes sense that these two would be there. Cranial nerves 5 through 8 are associated with the pons. And cranial nerves 9 through 12 are associated with the medulla oblongata. Well, just MO. Now what that means is that if it's a sensory fiber, the sensory fiber will end, or the sensory fibers will end at these structures. If we're talking motor fibers, those motor fibers will begin at that brainstem structure. So if we take something like the vagus nerve, which is a mixed nerve, it has both sensory and motor. The motor fibers originate in the medulla, but the sensory fibers that go into the medulla end there. And that works for the other two brainstem regions as well. So some signals are sent there, and some signals originate there. I'm not going to put these pictures on the exam and have you identify which one is which. I went over these, but I don't. It's not important. There was a saying I was trying to find, and I couldn't find it, where if you're holding a human brain in your hand and you can see these, what's left of these cranial nerves, there's a saying that helps you really figure out which ones they are, and I couldn't dig it up, and so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay? All right, any questions about cranial nerves?